day. So we're ready. I am Clark, the UGC Bacalaos. So today I am going to show you how to solve resultant forces. So we have a sample problem which is determine the magnitude and the direction measured counterclockwise from the positive x-axis of the resultant force acting on the ring at O. If our force of A is equals to 750 Newton and a theta of 45 degrees. So we have our illustration. In this illustration, we have our y-axis and x-axis. So our first in finding is we have to redraw the illustration. So we're going to redraw the every components of each forces. So we're going to redraw we have y-axis and our x-axis. So we're going to have our forces, which is our force A is equals to 750 Newton, and our force B, which is as a value of 800 Newton. Then we will redraw every component of every forces. So we have our FAY and FAX, and an angle which is given of 45 degrees. And in our force B, we have our force X, or 4BX rather, or an F of B over BY, and an angle of 30 degrees. So in this component, we will solve every forces with their respective components. So in our first will be force of A. So summation of Fx. So we will solve all the x-axis components. So we have first our 750 Newton times the sine of 45 degrees. So in this problem, we can wonder how we get into sine. So in this step, we use trigonometry. It will be 750 sine 45 degrees plus our force B, which is 800 cosine 30 degrees. So in order to get that, we have to calculate our calculating of 750 sine 45 degrees. We will get a 530.3300859 Newton, plus we get in 800 cosine 30 degrees, we get 692.00820,323 Newton. Then we will add this to, we have our summation of forces of X, which equals to 1223.15 Newton. So we already get our forces of the X. So next will be our forces of Y. So erase. Then we have summation of F Y is equals to our F1, as shown in the illustration. We have 750 which is cosine 45 degrees minus our component y of our force B, which is 800 sine 30 degrees. So in calculating those two, we have a 530.3300589 Newton minus 400 Newton. So our force, submission of force of Y is 130.33 Newton. Then we will use Pythagorean theorem in order to get our resultant. We already find out our resultant force of X and resultant force of Y, which is 1223.15 Newton, and our resultant force of Y, which is 130.33 Newton. So we have our R, which is the resultant, is equals to the square root of our forces of X squared plus forces of Y squared. Then in calculating, we squared our forces 1, which is 1223.15 squared plus, so we have to substitute 130.33 Newton squared. So is equals to square root of 1,496,095.923 Newton plus 16,985.93,129 Newton. So in this we will add to get the square root of 1,513,081.859 Newton. So we have to square this value, then we get 1,220 Newton, which is our resultant of those scalar vectors. So then we get our resultant, which is the magnitude. So our next is to get our direction. So in getting the direction, we already know the formula, which is theta is equals to inverse tangent of our forces, resultant forces of Y over our resultant force of X. Then, as we all know our value of our resultant force of X and Y. Then we substitute inverse tangent -1. Then we have 130.33 Newton over 1,223.15 Newton. So in this equation we get 6.08 degrees. So our theta will be 6.08 degrees. We calculated the magnitude and the direction of the problem. So we have here the resultant, which is 1,230 Newton, and our angle, which is 6.08 degrees. So we already calculated the problem. So now we will going to withdraw our final answer. So we already know that our resultant force of X is equals to 1,223.15 Newton, and our resultant force of Y is equals to 130.33 Newton, and the resultant of 1,230 Newton and an angle of 6.08 degrees. So we're going to draw our graph, our coordinates, which is our y-axis and our x-axis. So we have our force of X, which is a positive, so we're going to draw it in the first quadrant. So we have 1,223.15 Newton, and our summation of forces Y, which is 130.33 Newton. And we're going to do our resultant, which is a value. What we have here is 1230 Newton and an angle of 600, and an angle of 6.08 degrees. So that is our final answer. So thank you for listening. I hope you have learned a lot in my discussion. Thank you.